Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about cultured dairy and just kind of the point a lot of people who get on this anti-dairy movement seem to miss. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And this is the sort of stuff to where we've got to look at people out there who pretend to be part of the health world, the fitness world, things like that, and they use really bad junk science or really bad ideas to try to promote the idea that dairy is bad. Now, you have to understand at least one group involved in this, and that would be vegans, and many leading vegan advocates have clearly said that they are willing to lie. They are willing to lie if necessary to save animals, meaning they're willing to tell lies for the greater good. And in this case, I believe the whole concept that dairy is unhealthy for you falls under that category, that umbrella. Because the overwhelming majority of the scientific data suggests quite the opposite, that dairy is actually healthy, part of a healthy diet. And the same thing, you get people in this whole paleo movement, and the thing is that what people need to understand, when you start promoting ideas like this, what you are actually doing is causing harm. And people need to understand that. When you start promoting that healthy whole foods, or they don't even have to be whole foods, but foods that seem to promote general health and have health benefits, when you start telling people these are bad and to cut them out of their diets, when we have plenty of foods that we know are health problems in excess, refined sugars, refined oils, excessive amounts of saturated fat, all these things, when they're consumed in excess, and they're easily consumed in excess in today's world, these are your real health problems, all right? No one's getting fat from skim milk. No one's developing heart disease from skim milk, or fruit, or potatoes, or oats. I mean, these different foods that people want to attack, this is not the cause of our disease and our obesity. All right, fried chicken, Coca-Cola, French fries, double bacon cheeseburgers. All right, there's your causes. There's your problems. This is what's causing our health crisis. Dumping table sugar on everything. Trans fats, like a vegetable shortening being thrown in with a bunch of other sweets on top of it into pastry. These are the foods that are causing your health problems. All right, these are your problems. This is what's killing people when consumed in excess. It's not low-fat dairy. And arguably, and I'm going to link a set of studies down below, there's an argument as to whether full-fat dairy actually has major health negatives. That's actually a subject of debate. That's a point of scientific contention. What you're generally going to find, the overwhelming majority of nutrition researchers, registered dietitians, medical doctors, including cardiologists, almost universally agree that there are health benefits and that it's perfectly acceptable, at least, maybe not always benefits, but at least healthy and acceptable to consume low-fat or fat-free dairy. That is not a point of debate. That's not a point of debate at all. And so when you have people promoting the opposite, you've got to look at them and go, what in the hell are you people doing? Like, your ideas are fringe, and they are, but these are very vocal people out there, but their ideas are very fringe, and they're not backed by the science. This is anti-science. And furthermore, when you start looking at studies, like that study down below, they found an inverse relationship between cultured dairy and cardiovascular disease. So what does that mean? That means that people who consume cultured dairy products as a group have lower cardiovascular disease than people who don't consume them. Now, that doesn't mean it's a direct cause, but it's interesting. There's an inverse relationship. In other words, take a group of people anywhere in the country, any given city, the people who consume cultured dairy regularly have lower cardiovascular disease. That includes heart attacks, strokes, all of that, than people who don't. It should tell you something. There's a lot of proposed mechanisms how this could be occurring too, to figure out how there's causation. Well, the same thing when you start looking in different societies. Interesting thing, when you start looking at the longest lived, healthiest societies on Earth, some things they all have in common. Usually consuming whole grains is real high on that list. Grain-based diets, but also if you were to go through and look and pull the top 10 longest lived cultures or societies on Earth, about half of them consume cultured dairy. half of them. And you know what? The only health concerns we ever have about dairy is the saturated fat, which is again a point of contention in it, and the lactose, because a certain percentage of people, depending on where your ancestors come from, are lactose intolerant. Alright, lactose is your real concern, because there's tons of fat-free and low-fat dairy options available if you're still worried about the saturated fat end, which again, I understand is still a point of debate. But if you want to play it safe, there's low-fat versions of all these foods. That's been chopped out of it, more or less, or filtered out. As far as the lactose goes, it's easily dealt with. Culturing. I mean, there's also lactate milk and stuff where the enzyme has just been put back in to break it down, because that's the issue, guys. It's not that lactose is a problem for humans, it's that we're designed to consume lactose. We're mammals. We are all breastfed. We're all fed milk as babies. That's intrinsic to all mammals. All right, there's lactose in it. We have enzymes as children to break down the lactose. Many people, again, it varies a lot due to ethnicity and regions of the world where your ancestors come from. As we get older, lose the ability to create that enzyme. That enzyme stops being created. But a lot of people, there's over 1 billion people, actually several billion people in the world, who still have that enzyme in adulthood. They can still break it down. It's the question of, can you break down that sugar or not? Can you break it down properly in your stomach? That's it. People who can't, it can cause gastrointestinal upset. It's not lethal, not the end of the world. Probably not going to kill you. But, you know, it can cause diarrhea, gas, things like that. Not the best thing in the world. But the thing is, lots of healthy people who are lactose intolerant, who grew up still drinking it, lactose intolerant, and it didn't harm their health. They just have gastrointestinal distress. But the issue is, when we start culturing the drinks, that goes away. The culturing breaks the lactose down for us. Yogurts, kefirs, things like that. Right, the cultures in there, those good bacteria, break it down. Furthermore, what we found, that's the best source of these good gut flora. People who consume this stuff tend to break down fibers and things better. Well, people who digest and break down their plants and fiber and stuff better tend to have overall better health. It seems to improve your immune system. In other words, consuming cultured dairy improves your immune system. It improves your digestion, your overall digestion and breakdown of a lot of the healthier foods that we consume. This has health benefits. The people live longer who consume these things potentially. The same thing. I mean, even your medical doctors understand. This has been understood for generations. After they give you antibiotics, most doctors, or especially a registered dietitian, will tell you to consume cultured dairy, like yogurt, during it and every single day during your antibiotic treatment and afterwards, because the antibiotic can kill off the good bacteria in your GI tract. Cultured dairy restores it if it has alive cultures in it still. So we're looking at a lot of potential health benefits, and people need to understand dairy is one of the best sources of magnesium and calcium you're going to find. You know, that's the interesting thing. We see people out there all the time, in bodybuilders and other people, oh, I seem to be magnesium deficient. I added up my numbers and I'm deficient in magnesium. But they don't eat yogurt. They don't consume any cultured dairy because they're scared of dairy in general, other than maybe a protein shake, which has had a lot of the good stuff filtered out. And then they come up and say they're magnesium deficient. Well, if you were consuming a significant amount of low-fat dairy, you wouldn't be magnesium deficient. It's one of the best sources there is. Magnesium, calcium, things like that. There's a lot of stuff in here that benefits us. And the simple reality is these are healthy, nutritious foods. And we have strong data suggesting that various health problems are reduced in populations that consume cultured dairy. It's part of a healthy diet. And anyone who is out there saying that cultured dairy is bad for you, anyone who's saying that, including vegans, is actually really being a bad person. They are creating and spreading harmful information. They're spreading information that will cause harm if large numbers of people follow it. All right, they're directly responsible. And think about that. People need to think this stuff through when they start spreading unscientific nonsense like this. Oh, all dairy is bad. Don't consume it. Even these cultured drinks, no, they're terrible. It causes cancer, all this other stuff. There's no evidence of any of this. In fact, it seems to be quite the opposite. seems to be quite the opposite. Several forms of cancer seem to actually have, again, an inverse relationship between consumption of dairy. And the same thing, we start going to lower fat cultured dairies, and there's no mechanism at all by which any researcher or expert thinks there would be any correlation between that and any form of cancer. All right, it's absolutely absurd. So again, people need to think this stuff through before they just start following any of this nonsense. They need to start looking further in the research, and you're actually going to find that consumption of dairy, again, as long as you're paying attention to things like total fat intake, total calorie intake, paying attention to if you're lactose intolerant or not, and picking dairy that's appropriate based upon that, the general consensus among the leading experts in the world is that dairy is part of a healthy diet. All right, it's part of a healthy diet. But you have these extremists out here, dietary extremists, who are trying to promote the idea that this is some evil, harmful food, when in the reality it isn't. And by even trying to make it such and get people away from it, you're actually causing harm. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.